Over the last several weeks, we've brought to you interviews with a UFO whistleblower, a director who spoke with dozens of officials about possible secret government programs. And tonight, Brett Baer takes a closer look at some of those claims and speaks with a UAP researcher about what they are calling a government cover-up.
Thanks, Aisha. Lawmakers from both sides of the aisle and other government officials believe they should know more about unidentified aerial phenomena, or UAPs. Tonight we look at reports on some of the secret government programs that are being alleged.
This is so secret. There have been very few people in our entire government that have been allowed or provided access to it.
A new documentary featuring former and current officials from across the federal government is attempting to connect the dots on secret knowledge of UAPs.
This is the biggest discovery in human history.
CIA officials, DIA officials, naval intelligence officials, the list goes on and on.
In 1961, President John F. Kennedy promised America would land a man on the moon before the decade was out. It was bold, ambitious, politically urgent. The USSR had already launched the first satellite, the first man into space. America needed a win. This is where one of the most infamous theories began. Some believe the moon landing wasn't a technical triumph, but a cinematic one. They claim NASA, under pressure to beat the Soviets, faked the entire mission on a film set. And who would they turn to for such a task? Conspiracy theorists point to Stanley Kubrick, director of 2001, A Space Odyssey, released just a year before the moon landing. The film's realistic space visuals were groundbreaking. Too realistic, some say. Could Kubrick have helped NASA stage the moon footage? Is it a coincidence that he avoided interviews for years afterwards? Or that his latter films were filled with cryptic symbolism? Good
afternoon. A photo has surfaced that a lot of people are claiming is proof that the Roswell UFO incident was real. It's a picture of an alien-type creature, and they claim it was taken in 1947 in Roswell. Who better check it out than our Roswell reporter, Cheyenne Cope. She hit the UFO museum to see what people there think. Cheyenne.
Well, Kim, the picture definitely has people talking at the UFO museum. It's one of the first things you hear when you mention Roswell. Aliens. And people come from all over the country to see them.
I'm a firm believer in aliens.
Well, this week, a never-before-seen picture was released that some people believe is more proof that a UFO did crash here back in 1947.
According to Kodak, yes, it is real. It hasn't been doctored. It hadn't been touched. It is from that time period, from the photographers that were in this area in 1947.
The photo was revealed at a conference in Mexico City on Tuesday. Someone claimed they found it in a box in an attic in Sedona, Arizona, along with pictures of Clark Gable, Bing Crosby, and Dwight Eisenhower.
I served as the 4th Director of National Intelligence,
Director of Aviation Security in the National Security Council.
One-star admiral after 32 years of service.
Former Rear Admiral Tim Gallaudet served as the Navy's chief oceanographer and meteorologist, and as acting administrator of the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. Why'd you take part in that? And of the voices in there, are you convinced that these are credible folks that are really coming forward for the first time?
All those folks are credible, Brett. They're all colleagues of mine. I've worked with them for years. This is going to change the arc of human history. The fact that we're not alone in the universe and that higher order non-human intelligences are visiting us and interacting with us, whose intent we really are unsure of still. That's just mind-blowing.
Not everyone is convinced by the film. The New York Times writes the claims are unprovable, and Variety calls it inconclusive. for us to be comfortable doing stories about it, we have to believe that these documents and these experts that we're talking to are telling us the right thing. How do you think the country, the world, will react when, if this happens, it's disclosed?
On July 8th, 1947, the U.S. Army claimed to have found a flying saucer.
I have to believe this was something from another civilization.
But within hours, they retracted the statement. More than 70 years later, the debate is still raging.
Hey guys, welcome back to 20 Minutes or Less. I'm Steve Zaragoza.
I'm Elliot Morgan.
I truly believe in aliens, Elliot.
Cool, Steve.
I think the universe is too damn big for us to be the only life out there.
Cool, Steve.
So when I hear about ex-CIA agents coming out with, yeah, aliens are real, government is covering it up type stuff, I get all giddy like a little kid watching E.T. for the first time.
Steve's talking about Chase Brandon, a long-serving CIA agent who served 25 years with the agency who, speaking on the 65th anniversary of the 1947 Roswell, New Mexico incident, said that there is concealed information hidden in a vault within the agency's Langley headquarters that reveals the UFO crash incident actually happened.
Here's a question likely to cause arguments at home. What is humankind's greatest achievement? The Age of Enlightenment? Music, perhaps? What about the Great Pyramid of Giza? Well, for many, it doesn't get any more glorious than the day Neil Armstrong stepped foot on the moon. This year marks the 50th anniversary of that remarkable feat of technology and daring. And while the moonwalkers, Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin, dominate our memories of that event, there's a third astronaut who deserves his place in history. Michael Collins piloted the Apollo 11 command module in lunar orbit while the other two collected moon rocks. And as Sarah Arbour reports, if it wasn't for him, one of our greatest successes would have been a monumental failure. Right now, 400 kilometres above Earth, 6 men and women are hurtling around the globe 16 times a day in the International Space Station.
And all you have to do is turn yourself and your reference changes.
Just to think it's possible is mind-blowing.
I am working on...
Last October, in the quiet Mississippi town of Pascagoula, 2 local men confronted authorities with a rather bizarre story. Charles Hickson and Calvin Parker told of a strange craft landing near their fishing site and of being taken aboard by 3 unearthly creatures. The 2 men were questioned under hypnosis and lie detectors, but their story remained intact.
Former Canadian Minister of National Defense, Paul Hellyer, makes an astonishing statement. He claims to have knowledge that extraterrestrials are visiting Earth.
Why do you say that UFOs are as real as the airplanes flying over our heads?
Well, because I know that they are. They've been visiting this planet for thousands of years.
That's one small step for man.
Man landing on the moon.
One giant leap for mankind.
But believe it or not, some people say it never happened.
This whole thing was a fake.
Decide for yourself as we explore the evidence.
The Eagle has landed.
Analyze official government photos.
What a ride, what a ride.
Examine the films.
The flag flaps on the moon where there's no atmosphere.
And hear the testimony of one former astronaut who's not afraid to speak his mind.
NASA could have covered it up.
Could the government have orchestrated the deception of the century?
NASA could have pulled off the greatest hoax of all time.
You be the judge on Conspiracy Theory.
Hello, guys. David Vos. Boy, it's a beautiful day here in paradise. Oh, man. Well, I already went to the store and back and fed all the animals, and I'm sitting down here. And you know what? It's almost getting too late to do a video, but you know what? We're going to do one, and we're going to talk about what is going on. I mean, all of a sudden, evidently, everybody's into disclosure, right? They're going to tell us with all of the news agencies spending hour-long programs and talking little bits and pieces constantly all day long on the news. You got your YouTube and your TikToks, and everybody's talking about the Galactic Federation are coming, boy. Hoo-hoo-hoo. Yeah, aliens. And they've already found them. And we used to see all the discs and the flying saucers, and people didn't believe it. Why, you idiots, it was real. Did you see that picture? That Roswell-looking creature? Listen, I have to say that I was oblivious to all of this insanity when I was younger, and I'd see weird pictures and go, huh? And it was weird because I think they purposely made us believe that the people that were leaking this information were not authorized, or they weren't, valid. They were hoaxes. But yet the hoaxes kept coming, one after another. And usually by these same Bavarian Jews, Sitchin and Belenkowski and then Donikin, the chariots of the gods are coming, buddy. Oh, we were shown on the 6 o'clock news all the time about the aliens and the Roswell. They showed bodies. They were like hour programs on 2020 with Barbara Walters, or 60 Minutes, with Tom Brokaw. They would always tell you, we'd get Dan rather than concrete, but sometimes we'd get The Twilight Zone, right? With Alfred Hitchcock. And you really didn't know the difference between the scary and the pretend and reality, because Stanley Kubrick was making movies about some space odyssey, and then there's video going around with a guy that looks just like this Kubrick admitting to faking the whole thing. It was a movie set. He claims he just made it up. And I'm not going to play that again here. I played it before. I don't know if it's real. I mean, look, is it real or is it Polaroid? We will never know, because there isn't any evidence one way or the other. The only evidence is that I'm here. I've been here for a long time. This whole world has always been just this world. I believe we're in an enclosed system, that we are divine beings manifesting our world around us. I don't believe in stars and planets and other worlds light years away. I mean, we've proven conclusively on this channel that it's impossible to be able to see the sun 93 million miles away, and then to be able to see Polaris 450 light years away and be able to see anything. The math doesn't work. It doesn't fit. You cannot have a vacuum of space. You cannot have endless miles of nothing, then you can measure it. We've gone through all these things. We've got the Van Allen belt that is supposed to be so hot, there's no way you could get through it. The radiation would cook you, right? I mean, not to mention that other firewall that's out beyond Pluto that's like 90,000 degrees, that they're claiming they've got a ship going along out there that took the temperatures. And how did it not burn up? 90,000 degrees would incinerate, vaporize into plasma any known substance in the universe. But yet they've got a tin can filled with rocket fuel, or I guess it's not even got any fuel. It's just humming along at thousands of miles an hour through a vacuum of nothing. And I guess they want us to believe that it's got a solar panel. Maybe it's a big solar panel. Probably couldn't be too much bigger than the ones I got, because the whole satellite or pod or whatever it is they got flying on out there, it literally is going all that distance. Maybe some little motor in the back, whing, being run by a solar panel that has literally catapulted it all the way out beyond Pluto, which is, I don't know, dang near a light year, right? And it would have to go far beyond the speed of sound. I mean, approaching the speed of light or something to even get there in this amount of time. And what is it fueled by? Solar? They claim that it's a vacuum out there. And because it's a vacuum, the temperature is 500 degrees below zero in this vacuum of space. That would completely pulverize the coldness of that coldness would completely shatter any known metal that we have. And on the other hand, if the sun hits it directly, traveling through nothing, it might literally warm it up to, hundreds of degrees above on one side, right? Or something. It's crazy. They are claiming that the only way they can do it is a specific type of nickel plating or something. Friends, it doesn't matter what kind of metal you're using. You can't get through 90,000 degrees. And that's just a fact, Jack. And anybody who disputes it, I don't know what to tell you. And the fact that we've supposedly got a space station out there, I don't know, it's some way out there, like way beyond the moon or something. And it's supposed to be 250 degrees below zero there in the shade. And when the sun directly hits it, it's 250 degrees above zero. Can you imagine when those astronauts open the door, right, and throw out their little rope or little tether, and they go, I guess, take their little metal hook and click it onto the little rope and tether themselves out there dangling in this vastness of nothing. They're either 250 degrees below zero, which they would freeze instantly. They're wearing this little canvas white suit. There's no motor inside the suit that could keep them warm. By the way, the radiation at that degree, 250 degrees above or below, the radiation would itself cook your brain. But if it's in direct sunlight, which they show it, where you can see them, and I don't know who's filming them, right? Somebody's filming them, tethering around out through space. They got a camera that's kind of floating around on another rope over there that somehow stays steady and films them. Guys, who filmed them when they landed on the moon? Who filmed that? You could supposedly see the rover landing on the moon, Apollo 11, but nobody's there to film it. And then when it leaves, supposedly we see it leaving, and who's filming it? Why is the United States flag waving in the wind when there's supposed to be no atmosphere on the moon? Why are there no stars visible from the moon? Why didn't they take a good picture and focus the lens? Why does it look like a studio movie set? And a very poor B-rated movie at that. I mean, way worse than any movie we've ever seen. And yet the entire world believed it. Guys, in the 1960s, they didn't even have cameras or computers like we have today. There's no way they could get a signal out from beyond the moon and send it back to Earth. Remember, we're spinning every 24 hours, right? And we're spinning around the sun supposedly every, I don't know how many, 365 days. And the moon's spinning. And there's no way you could get a signal straight to the Earth or just happen to get a shot right straight to the right side of the Earth. Somehow have a satellite just positioned exactly to get that signal. Now, guys, I used to take satellite dishes. This was like in the 80s or 90s. And I used to take satellite dishes out for a satellite TV. And I would have this satellite dish on a trailer and pull it out there and set up in their backyard and hone it into one of the satellites, like Galaxy 5 or whatever. They had these satellites. And sometimes you'd spend 20 minutes trying to get it in because you had to hit it right on the satellite. I guarantee, I know enough about these things, that it is impossible to get a signal from space when we're all spinning and rotating the way we are, and with the distances, and especially since in those days they didn't have good technology or good signals and radio capabilities. Not only that, but you would need a great deal of power, like at least the size of a car engine or something, that would get that signal to go all the way to the Earth, 250,000 miles away, and then through the atmosphere on Earth, which is miles and miles and miles, and all the way down to some satellite that's retrieving this message. It is impossible. I guarantee you that. And for any of you who want to know for sure if it's possible, just look up the things I'm saying and get the math and do it. Prove to me that you could get a signal. I know you could go ask AI and they'd probably come up with some cockamamie story, but it isn't real. And people are going to have to start opening their eyes and looking at things and realizing they're just lying to us. Now, the reason I talk about this is because right now they're talking about this disclosure and aliens, and they're acting like, they got these important people in a dark studio, right? Sitting there telling you, yeah, I used to be an astronaut and it didn't happen. Or I used to work for NASA and yeah, we're going to reveal soon, because it's true, I was there. There are aliens. We have alien bodies. It is a hoax from the CIA. If you don't know that the CIA, like the KGB, is involved in MK Ultra mind control, and not just here or there, but the entire population of the world is under a mind control delusion. It's mind control. They're trying to keep us. Friends, what could be the reason that they're doing this? Well, aside from just they want us to all believe and trust them, believe they're God, right? Look at the science that they tell us is true. We're a speck of nothing in the middle of a vacuum of nothing. And the universe is infinite, swirling of everything flying around. And it all started with a big bang. We don't know what's beyond that, but by golly, we know there was a big old bang. And after that big old bang, man, it just started flying around things, dust. Where the dust came, the particles and all the laws of the universe and all just flying around everywhere. And lo and behold, I don't know how many billion years later, we crawled up out of a slimy, bacteria-filled pond, out of the ooze. We were like a little pollywog. We flopped around, flopped ourselves up on land, and miraculously grew little legs or something, became frogs, and then we became lizards, I guess, or I don't know what happened to all the insects or where they came from. Maybe they were some other pond scum that got flung up in the tree, and as it was flying through the air, it somehow evolved into wings. But this then evolved into animals, and then it evolved into humans. But the biggest problem with all of this is, and you might think it would just be that it doesn't make any sense and it's illogical and it's a theory. It isn't. We haven't got any proof. Ain't nobody went out there in space and measured it. Ain't nobody went out there and took the temperatures. They got the temperatures and they know what all the ingredients are to make a sun, and how the various suns are different, and one's a dwarf and one's this and one's that, and they're made up of these kind of chemicals and hydrogen bombs, and they just know everything, what planets got water, and literally they can just focus in and they can tell you those little dots out there are another galaxies. And how could they know that the galaxy looked like it does, like they say it does, with 4 arms? We're in the middle of it, a little speck of dust, like a person in the middle of a forest. And you're going to tell that guy in the middle of a forest, you can't move, but you can even have a telescope if you want, guy. We'll give you a telescope. We want you to look through the forest and tell us what the trees are on the other end, 100 miles away, on the other end of the forest. And we want to know what the leaves look like and the composition of the bark and whether there is any other kinds of shrubs. And, we want to document all the different kinds of shrubs and trees and plants in this 100 by 100 mile forest. But you got to stay right there in the middle of the forest. And yeah, you won't be able to see the forest for the trees is really what's going on. And somehow or another, we're able to look out through the vastness of all these stars 200,000 light years away, in breadth. And we can see the forearms and the whole diggity dag dong thing. Guys, I could go on and on and on, but it's absolutely a hoax. And these aliens, they've been doing this hoaxing thing since after World War II. That's when we started getting the operations and the projects that used to be done by Nazis. They're the ones that started the operations, military operations projects. As soon as we won the war, now they're all doing it over here after Project Paperclip. Now we're doing projects and operations. We've got Project Paperclip, right? We brought them over in the Project Mockingbird with the news agencies. And NASA was created by a Satanist, Aleister Crowley. The people that were his students that were all brought over here by Charles Taze Russell, by the way, right after World War I, they brought them over, these Germans. Charles Russell did. It's all documented. And Charles Russell invented the first motion picture and started the first 3 motion picture companies, brought them to Hollywood. They created Hollywood. And then in Pasadena, on this one road, you'll find the Agape Lodge, where Aleister Crowley started a branch of the OTO, the Orientist Temple Ordi or something. And it's some satanic organization, and his students were Anton LaVey, meaning a Levite, LaVey, that started the Satanism, and one guy that starts, L. Ron Hubbard starts Scientology, which, it's got all the big movie stars in Hollywood. NASA, Jack Parsons started the aerospace agencies, or the rocket industry, and NASA, and other people started the CIA and different groups all around the world. Aleister Crowley was a triple agent. He worked for Germany, Britain, and the United States. And in other words, the KGB, the intelligence agencies, CIA, Israeli intelligence agencies are all working together. It's a big hoax. They want us to believe that we're in war with Russia, that Democrats are at war with Republicans, that, capitalisms and communisms, and it's all this Hegelian dialectic. And it's a method by which we are confused and given lies and controlled. Now, of course, the most important way that they keep us in control is the MK Ultra mind control, which is suffering through trauma. It's trauma-based control. We got the cops on every corner with red and blue lights, and it's something that creates intimidation. You're constantly being intimidated with bills and permits and cops and laws and prisons. It's crazy how people have sort of grown cold to such evil. Do you know that when you pass by a courthouse just about anywhere in any county in the United States and probably anywhere in the world, under the courthouse or nearby, there are hundreds of people walking around in orange jumpsuits for trumped up charges like the traffic stops, or they had a little drugs on their possession, or they didn't pay something or stole something or whatever. But they're all being housed like caged animals, and nobody seems to care. And the whole legal system is so evil that the only people who wouldn't know that are people that have never been in jail or never been so misfortuned to have been homeless or literally just out of your mind on drugs or and you say, oh, well, that's their fault. You have no idea. This is a purposeful, it's like the slums. They brought the minorities in the slums and then give them some little stipend, like the native peoples out here that think they have their own nation, like Navajo Nation, and it's really just the exact same government that we all have. It's just that their nation, they call it a nation, we call it our state, and every state is got to be doing whatever the government tells them. They got little yellow school buses. All the kids got to go to school, learn their propaganda. They got their stores and their jails and their courthouses here on the Navajo reservation. These poor Navajo individuals aren't even allowed to buy cigarettes or booze because the government doesn't allow them to have it. Why? So they can make all the money and have a person that they grant a permit to sell booze and cigarettes just off the reservation is owned by some Bavarian that can make all the money. And they can go in and tell them how to, distribute their water. If it's got something in it they don't like, they make it put fluoride in it so that all the native peoples are mentally ill. And this is just so ridiculous and evil that if people don't see what's going on, I just don't know what to tell them. So right now, this is all coming to a head, and guess what else is coming to a head? Well, December the 19th, they claimed that an I-3 Atlas is coming. That's not really an asteroid or a comet, which, by the way, there are no comets because there is no stars light years away, and there's no big galaxy flying around out there. Just little slits in the tarp that's, covering us or something, whatever. But who knows, here on the Truman Show. But what we do know is that this narrative in movies, we got sci-fi, horror movies, and alien books and galactic federations and all this poppycock that's been shoved down our unsuspecting minds for like 80 years or 70 years since after World War II. Remember the crop circles we were being told about and all the alien abductions we were hearing about? It all started off with the flying saucers right after World War II, right? And the Project Paperclip. But that's all been going on. And right when the man who takes power, President Trump, who has more authority and power and influence than any other president that we've ever had in history, including George Washington, and more authority and power than any other dictator that's ever had. Because he's not just completely controlling our country as a dictator right now, but he's literally going into every country in the world and doing whatever he wants with his military, doing whatever he wants. He tells people, you're fired, some other country, right? Tells everybody what to do. And has been declared the Messiah by the Israeli government. Now this, we ain't got time to prove that today, but you guys all should know that by now. Couple of different times in different ways he's been honored as the Messiah. And he has all this power. And right now, we're going into what everybody knows is a one world new system, new financial government system. AI is coming online. You know it. And if you've ever heard the Bible, that's exactly what the Bible says would happen. That every man, woman, and child will worship this beast system, where ironically, no one would be able to buy or sell without the mark of this beast. And they say that it will be given breath and it will speak. And all the world will wonder and say, who can do battle with the beast, right? Friends, this is happening. And if you don't see it, you're just closing your eyes to everything. And not only that, now they're telling us right at this juncture, I see 1,000 points of light, Bush said, where a new world order can emerge, a new era, freer from the threat of terror, stronger in the pursuit of justice, and more secure in the quest for peace. To make a one world order, and we will. You remember that? What? And then everybody just forgets or doesn't care that there were no weapons of mass destruction, that everything that anyone ever told us was always a lie. 9/11, if you don't know that that was a complete hoax, then you're just not paying attention. The whole COVID, oh, I can't say that word. Remember that one? Putting a little mask over your face. Do you know how many people died for that? And do you know how many people that are just walking around thinking, well, no big deal? Friends, I can't go into that part of this today, but there are literally millions of people all around the world suffering. I personally know that they forced Jehovah's Witnesses to get, the thingy, and thousands of them have perished. And they were forced to do it by a religion, and I'm hearing that people all around the world that were forced to do this, many of them are compromised in their health, and some of them have died. So, friends, why aren't we getting it that everything we're being told is a lie? And we're being set up for this December 19th thing. When this I3 Atlas comes around, they're going to claim, I don't know what they're going to use it for, but they're certainly trying to make us all believe that something's about to happen. And I know that at the very same time that's about to happen, they're supposedly going to switch the economy over to Bitcoin, I guess, or XRP is going to take over. And when that takes over, guys, there may be a collapse in between, but when it finally takes over, in order to participate, to buy and sell, you'll have to get the mark. And we don't know exactly what it is, but I'm sure you'll have to agree to keep all of the laws of Donald Trump and his law and order that he's decided to, put in place due to the fact that he is now dictator of the world. And we're no longer going to be free to worship the deity of our choice, because that's what this whole Gesera Nasera thing is, or Noahide laws, which all the Abrahamic covenant that's going in place. More countries are joining now. Guys, we better think again. Now, after having said all of that, let me just share with you one aspect of how they have lied to us. Look at this little thingy right here. It seems that AI has been listening to me, because they would never have said this, I don't know, maybe a few weeks or months ago. I asked Zadok, David's priest, was not of Levi, but of Melchizedek. So I'm not talking about Melchizedek when I say Zadok. David had a priest named Zadok. And most people, and AI says that Zadok was a grandson of Levi. But I said Zadok, David's priest, was not of Levi, but Melchizedek. And they say the statement is correct. Melchizedek, not a Levite, was a priest to whom King David would have given precedence. Because David, see what they're saying here very carefully. They don't want to say, no, Zadok was not a Levite. They don't want to say that. They're basically saying it by saying, Melchizedek, not a Levite, was a priest to whom King David would have given precedence. Well, who's saying there's a Melchizedek priest that David gave precedence? They wouldn't know that. They wouldn't believe that. Except Zadok, which was clearly in my question. So Zadok is the Melchizedek priest that David gave precedence, having given precedence because David was a priest after the order of Melchizedek, not the Levitical order. David, who was of the tribe of Judah, held the office of king, a different office from the Levitical priesthood, which was reserved for those in the tribe of Levi. Melchizedek, a priest king of Salem, before the time of the Levitical priesthood, represents a superior, eternal priesthood. When would a Judeo-Christian web page ever have admitted this in the past? Melchizedek was not a Levite, but I asked about Zadok. But they're still saying Melchizedek because it's really the same thing, so they can tell me the truth, but they aren't putting it in writing. They're not wanting to admit that Zadok David's priest was a Melchizedek, but they're saying he was, they're just not saying it. Melchizedek predates the establishment of the Levitical priesthood, was a priest of deity most high, not the priest of Yahweh, but the priest of the El Elyon in Salem. And David held a different office. David was not a Levitical priest because he was from the tribe of Judah, not a Levite. Instead, he was the king who was later prophesied to be a priest after the order of Melchizedek. The Melchizedek priesthood is superior. The Melchizedek priesthood is portrayed as superior to the Levitical priesthood because Melchizedek, king of Salem, received tithes from Abraham, while Abraham's descendant Levi was still in his loins. This indicates a superiority of authority, which was then inherited by Jesus, the Messiah, who was also prophesied to be the priest in order of Melchizedek. Now, with this logic that they're admitting that the reason that Melchizedek is superior to Levi, they're saying is because it was before Levi, that Levi was in the loins of Abraham when Abraham paid tithes to Melchizedek. So Melchizedek is superior by that same logic. And it's an obvious logic. Then Jethro, otherwise known as Reuel, was superior to Moses or the Levites. And Jethro was a Midianite priest. But Jethro had a daughter named Zipporah, and we've talked about how some believe that Zipporah was actually Miriam. However, again, there is a verse in the Bible that says that there was a Miriam who was the daughter of, or a granddaughter of Levi. And so everybody believes that Miriam was a Levite. And they also believe that John the Baptist was a Levite because his mother and his father, Zechariah, was of the lineage of Levi. And they have some verses in the Bible that they think proves that. Okay, but I'm going to show you that AI knows that I'm right, but they still can't admit it, and they write it in this manner. Now, let me click this button where it says dive deep, right here, dive deep into AI mode, and then we'll get the actual serious AI answer. It says David's priest was not of Levi. And then they say this statement, now it's the real AI, the deep one, not the one that everybody gets. This is the AI mode that they're testing out on me. The statement you are referring to is a key biblical concept, specifically found in the book of Hebrews and Psalms 110. It is a theological point that King David's future descendant, the Messiah, Jesus, would be a priest forever after the order of Melchizedek, not of the Levitical line. Here is the breakdown. Melchizedek was a king of Salem, and David was the king from the tribe of Judah, not the tribe of Levi. Psalms 110:4, a psalm attributed to David, prophesies, "The Lord has sworn and will not change his mind. You are a priest forever in the order of Melchizedek." That was in the Psalms about David. The New Testament book of Hebrews uses this prophecy to explain that Jesus, who was also of the tribe of Judah, established a new and eternal priesthood superior to the temporary Levitical priesthood, fulfilling the prophecy of an order like Melchizedek. Therefore, the point is that the prophesied ultimate priest disconnected to David's line was of the order of Melchizedek, demonstrating a priesthood that transcends the specific rules of the law of Moses. Anyway, what I'm trying to share with you here is that our government or the world or whoever's running the show is lying to us in every field, whether it's science or, whatever hoax they're going to play on us next, which is going to be a doozy. But even the Bible itself. And we can come to some conclusions if we really understand this. But, so, let me tell you what's really going on here, that they're not telling you, and that they could know, or they probably do know, but they are not telling scholars. And scholars are just parrots. They just repeat what they're told in their little sequestered group or their religion or their, because atheism's a religion, And Judaism is a religion. Science is a religion. Capitalism is a religion. And everybody's brainwashed into one or more of these religions. So when you listen to individuals that, like Zechariah Sitchin or Velenkowski or Hancock or any of these people that are out there talking, George Norrie on late night, radio and the abductions they're talking about or whatever they're going on, with that. Art Bell. What's going on is people really believe what they're saying. They're all a bunch of stooges. Joe Rogan hasn't a clue, right? Even Tucker Carlson, he's just working for the man. He probably is sincere, probably likes Christianity. But they're telling him it's okay to teach this. And now he thinks, oh, I guess my dad, head of the CIA, MK Ultra mind control propaganda in the United States and abroad, was Tucker Carlson's father. And Tucker Carlson's also CIA. But, he may be sincere and believes that they're just good people down there and they're giving him the right to tell people the truth. But he works for them. He's being paid by them. It's hard to believe that any of them are sincere. But here's the thing. What they're not telling you is that Laban, where Jacob went and got his wives, Rachel and Leah, and his two concubines, Laban is Assyrian, right? Armenian. We all know that. What they never tell you is who was Laban's wife. Well, the Midrash, the rabbis will tell you that his wife was Jobab. Do you know who Jobab was? This is the biggest conspiracy, one of the biggest conspiracies that the world has been subject to for so long, guys, that we are not being told who Israel is, or who the Canaanites were, or who Esau is, right? And any of the meaning of the Bible, which they probably could figure out, or had figured out at one time, but put it under the carpet. Well, Jobab is another way of saying Job. You know that book in the Bible called Job that nobody knows? Well, who's this Job guy? Because he wasn't an Israelite. And yet he's considered one of the wisest and most humble and greatest man that ever lived. They say his book is very old, the book of Job. Well, Job or Jobab was the high priest of the Canaanites. And in that Canaanite land was mixed with Esau, Ishmael, and the Midianites, which were from Keturah, all from Abraham. And all of these individuals, Esau, the Jewish people hate them. They fought and they murdered each other for a long, long time. And, well, literally, because the Jewish people under the Torah were supposed to kill all the Canaanites. And, of course, the Canaanites were interbred and mixed with the Midianites and Esau and Ishmael. And so they, like we read the other day in Isaiah 34 and 35, Idumea, Yahweh has this hatred for Edom and for Esau, and he wants to destroy them all, according to the literal understanding of the Bible. However, Laban, where Jacob goes and Abraham goes and Isaac goes to get their wives, because Abraham's wife Sarah came from there, Isaac's wife Rebekah came from there, Jacob's Rachel and Leah came from there, but nobody ever tells you who his wife was. A Canaanite priestess, the high priestess. Laban was the king of the world who was married to the high priestess. And then it was handed to Jacob because he gave Jacob wives that were of the high lineage of the high priesthood of the Canaanite line. And Job was a respected high priest from Abimelech. And so when Tamar married, and this is something the rabbis will tell you if you look it up, but nobody seems to care to look it up or even try to figure any of this out. But you know how Judah had two sons, Onan and and they were married to a Canaanite. Well, the Canaanite that they were married to is of this Job lineage. And then Judah himself marries this woman named Tamar. Actually, he sleeps with her, and she's a Canaanite high priestess. And again, they call her a whore or prostitute, which in the Hebrew just means kodesh, or a holy woman. And they know that, but they deliberately hide that. And they also hide the fact that Tamar was, get this, the daughter of Abimelech, the daughter of Melchizedek. So Judah then marries into the Melchizedek priest line, which is of Canaan. And that's why Judah had the scepter at all. And so this Elimelech and Naomi, that their kids don't have any kids, and then their daughter-in-law Ruth has to marry a Levirate marriage with Boaz, the Judahite. Well, Elimelech is this kind of way that all the kings of Canaan were always called, Molech or Abimelech or Ahimelech. When David received the priesthood of Melchizedek, it literally says he got the priesthood from Ahimelech at a place called Nob in our Bible. Do you know that they're hiding the fact that the word Nob is where we get the word Nabi? And Nabi means a Canaanite priest. The Nabis were the Canaanite priests, the high priesthood. And it was not of the line of Levi, but it was of the Canaanite line. And there was a man, it was named Zedek, that David made his high priest. He was the king, and he was like Pontifex Maximus. And Ezekiel tells us that the Zadokite line would be the one that they would use in the coming rebuilding of the spiritual temple that's in Ezekiel, that no other priest would ever be used again. We talked about the Dead Sea individuals, the Essenes that wouldn't worship at Jerusalem, at Herod's temple, didn't believe in Levites, and only would use Zadokite priests, which were actually at Heliopolis. So Judah marries a Melchizedek Canaanite priestess. And then, guess what? Rachel and Leah are high priestesses from the great high priestess queen. The rabbis say her name was Adina. Adina was the high queen mother of the Canaanite line that married Laban. And then her daughters were given to Jacob, and Jacob had the high priesthood and had the birthright. And then Jacob had 12 sons, and that lineage, or the garment from Eve that we talked about the other day, which was the high priestess garment that was handed down through Cain's line and through the Canaanites, which Laban was married to, was now being handed to Jacob. He was married to the Canaanite priestess himself. And they handed that wedding garment to Joseph, and Joseph then went down into Egypt, where the throne of the Canaanite priestess was, the throne of the nations that would rule all world. And this is why Judah married a Canaanite priest, to try and, be relevant. But what I'm getting at here is that Levi then was a descendant of the Canaanite priesthood. And this is why Levi was ever used at all. Now, Levi was somebody that came along, many years after the priesthood had been going along in its high priesthood form of Zadok. But when it became the priesthood down through Reuel, we talked about that. We talk about it many times. Reuel, also Jethro. Reuel was the son of Job. Job in your Bible is the father of Reuel. He's the great high Canaanite, Midianite, Ishmael, Esau priest of Mount Seir. And Moses married his daughter, who was in the text in the Bible, it says she was a Cushite woman. And so we don't know whether Moses had one woman named Zipporah, another woman that was a Cushite, and another woman that some people think was Miriam, was another one his wife, some think was his sister. But if Miriam was, as it appears in the Bible, the sister of Aaron and Moses, well, it doesn't matter because they were children of Levi, who was the child of the high Canaanite Adina priesthood. And so the reason why, to start with, Moses was a high priest, and then eventually David went and got another line from Bethel or from Nob, which is the Nabi, the high priesthood of Melchizedek. And the priesthood was carried on through that line, bypassing the Levites that were at Herod's temple because they were unfaithful. And, there was one group of priests at Herod's temple called Sadducees. The word Sadducee is supposed to come down from the word Zadokite. However, if you look at the Maccabees and all the scriptures after the Jewish exile, you'll see that none of them were of the Zadokite line except the ones that went to Heliopolis. Those who were specifically of the Zadokite line that David chose when he went to the Nabi, or Bethel, or Heliopolis, where he again created a new line from the existing line that would continue on with the high priesthood, the Melchizedek priesthood. But the ones at Herod's temple were no longer allowed to be priests by the divine Father. And this is why when Jesus comes, he says, you guys are doing wrong. You've been abandoned. I would have gathered you, but you would not. Your house is left unto you desolate. And so Zechariah, it tells you in the Bible that John's mother was Elizabeth and his father was Zechariah. And everybody says his lineage is back to Levi, but it's not true. His lineage goes back to Zadok, who also goes back to Levi, who also goes back to the high queen, the high priestess mother, queen mother of the Canaanites. So Zechariah was, and John the Baptist and Elijah were from the Canaanite high priesthood. They're not Levites, none of them. Even if they have lineage to Levi, Levi was just one link in the line of the Canaanite priesthood. But once Levi's sons, Kohath and the other kid, Gershom, and those guys apostated, they were basically apostate throughout the entire time. The Levitical priesthood that went down to Miriam was the true line, and that was at Bethlehem or Ephratah, and that's where all the high priests came. Samuel, Samson, Gideon, King David, and that was the line at Bethel, not at Shiloh. Bethel is Heliopolis, as we've been saying, and this is what's going on, and the world is not telling you, even though they know this information. None of the scholars know it because they're not capable of praying or believing in Scripture or thinking for themselves, but they're just following the narrative. Anyway, we're almost an hour. I'm going to go ahead and leave it there, guys. I want to get into that deeper. We're going to lay it all out, the whole lineages of Judah and Moses and Leah and all the people, and we'll do that in an upcoming video. Hope you guys have a wonderful evening. May the Lord bless you all. His grace and His peace will be with you. We'll see you tomorrow, guys. Have a good one.